Hi, I'm Natalie. My sister told me I'd never fit into this world. She said my body was wrong, that I'd embarrass the family, that I should just accept being invisible. So when I built an empire worth $8 million, guess who came crawling back asking for a job? And when she tried to destroy everything I'd created, what I found hidden in her emails made the entire industry freeze. Want to know what she was really doing behind my back? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house that smelled like vanilla candles and disappointment. Our mother kept the living room pristine, white furniture nobody was allowed to sit on, glass coffee tables that showed every fingerprint. Vanessa was the golden child, 7 years older than me, with the kind of frame that made people stop mid-sentence. Long limbs, collarbones that could cut glass, a waist you could wrap your hands around. She modeled locally, did pageants, won crowns that collected dust on her bedroom shelf. I was 12 when I realized I'd never look like her. We were getting ready for a cousin's wedding, and I'd squeezed myself into a dress my mother had picked out. It was pale pink, structured, meant for someone with a different body. I stood in front of the hallway mirror, tugging at the fabric, trying to make it work. Vanessa walked past, stopped, and tilted her head like she was observing a broken lamp. "You know that's never going to fit right," she said. Her voice wasn't cruel exactly, just matter of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. "You're built different. Always will be." My mother appeared behind her, lipstick perfect, pearls resting against her collarbone. She didn't say anything, just sighed and went to find something else for me to wear. Something looser. Something that would hide me better. That night at the wedding, Vanessa stood in the front row for photos while I was shuffled to the back, half hidden behind Uncle Raymond's broad shoulders. I didn't cry. I just memorized the feeling of being erased. High school wasn't much better. Vanessa had graduated years before I started, but her legacy lingered in the hallways like expensive perfume. Teachers remembered her. They'd see my last name on the roster and light up, then look at me and the light would dim just a little. I wasn't ugly, I knew that. I had my father's dark eyes, my grandmother's thick hair, a smile that people said was warm. But I also had hips that strained against denim, thighs that touched, a stomach that wasn't flat no matter how many sit-ups I did in my bedroom at 2 a.m. Vanessa left for Miami when I was 15. She signed with a small agency, did catalog work, swimsuit campaigns for brands nobody had heard of. She'd come home for holidays with stories about photographers and parties and people who mattered. She'd sit at the dinner table, picking at her salad, and my parents would hang on every word like she was narrating the gospel. I'd sit there, quiet, eating my mother's pot roast, feeling like a ghost at my own family's table. When I told them I wanted to study photography in college, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's nice, sweetheart," he said. "Something to fall back on." My mother patted my hand and said maybe I could take pictures at weddings, make a little side income. Vanessa laughed, not meanly, just like the idea was quaint. "You'd be good at that," she said. "Behind the camera. Where you're comfortable." I went to community college in Charlotte for 2 years, saved every dollar I made working at a bookstore, then transferred to a state school in Austin. I didn't tell my family I was leaving until a week before I packed my car. My mother cried, said I was abandoning them. My father said Austin was too far, too expensive, too risky. Vanessa was in Miami by then, barely called anymore, but when she heard, she sent me a text that said, "Good luck proving whatever point you think you're making." Austin felt like breathing for the first time. The city was loud, colorful, unapologetic. I rented a tiny studio in a neighborhood where murals covered every wall and food trucks lined the streets. I finished my degree, started freelancing, took any gig I could find. Headshots for actors, product photography for local businesses, event coverage for nonprofits that couldn't afford much. I was good at it. Better than good. I had an eye for light, for angles, for capturing something real in people's faces. One afternoon, I was shooting for a vintage clothing store in South Congress. The owner, a woman named Carmen Delgado, had asked me to photograph her spring collection. She was in her 50s, silver streaks in her black hair, the kind of woman who wore turquoise jewelry and didn't apologize for taking up space. Halfway through the shoot, she stopped me. "You ever think about being on the other side of the camera?" she asked. I laughed. "Not really my thing." She looked at me for a long moment, the way a sculptor might look at a block of marble. "You've got something. A presence. Most people don't have that." I brushed it off, finished the shoot, sent her the photos. But a week later, she called me. Said she had a friend, a photographer who worked with a modeling agency that specialized in curve and plus-size talent. Said they were looking for fresh faces. Said she'd already sent him some of the photos I'd posted on my portfolio site, the ones where I'd needed a stand-in model and used myself because I couldn't afford to hire anyone. I almost said no. The voice in my head sounded a lot like Vanessa's. "You're built different. Always will be." But something in me, maybe spite, maybe curiosity, said yes. His name was Troy Bennett, mid-30s, energetic in a way that felt genuine. He met me at a cafe in East Austin, looked through my photos, and nodded slowly. "You've got the look," he said. "Editorial. High fashion. The kind of face that tells a story." "I'm a photographer," I said. "Not a model." "Why not both?" He leaned back in his chair. "The industry's changing. People want real. They're tired of the same cookie-cutter images. You could do something here." I signed with Azure Models 3 weeks later. It was a small agency, nothing glamorous, but they believed in something different. My first shoot was for a local boutique, nothing major, just an online campaign. But when the photos went live, something shifted. People commented. Shared. Said they felt seen. Said I looked like someone they knew, someone real. More work came. Regional campaigns, fitness brands that wanted authenticity, a denim company that was trying to break away from the airbrushed standard. I was nervous at first, awkward in front of the camera. But Carmen had been right. There was something there. I learned to hold space, to let the lens find me instead of chasing it. I learned that confidence wasn't about being the smallest person in the room. It was about refusing to shrink. 2 years in, I booked my first national campaign. A activewear brand called Elevate was launching a size-inclusive line, and they wanted faces that matched their message. The shoot was in Los Angeles, 3 days, full production team. I flew out on a Tuesday morning, my stomach tight with nerves. When I walked onto set, I saw the other models, women with bodies like mine, some bigger, some smaller, all of them standing there like they belonged. The creative director, a woman named Rachel Kim, pulled me aside before we started. "I've been following your work," she said. "You don't perform for the camera. You just exist in it. That's rare." The campaign launched 2 months later. Billboards in major cities, ads in magazines, a commercial that aired during prime time. My phone didn't stop buzzing for days. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Strangers saying thank you. Brands reaching out with offers. And then, a text from Vanessa. "Saw your ad. Looks good." That was it. No congratulations. No acknowledgement of what it meant. Just 3 words that felt like a shrug. I didn't respond. But my mother called. She was crying, which was unusual. She said she was proud, that she'd always known I'd find my way. My father got on the line and said something about perseverance. Neither of them mentioned the years of silence, the dismissals, the way they'd made me feel like an afterthought. I thanked them and hung up. Work kept coming. Bigger campaigns, better pay, more visibility. I moved into a nicer apartment in Coconut Grove, a neighborhood in Miami where the streets were lined with banyan trees and the air smelled like salt and jasmine. I'd moved to Miami because that's where the work was, where the industry had started to notice me. It felt strange being in the same city as Vanessa, but Miami was big enough that our worlds didn't have to collide. Except they did. I was 3 years into my career when I got the call that changed everything. A luxury lingerie brand called Lavelle wanted me as the face of their new campaign. Not just a model in the lineup. The face. The centerpiece. It was the kind of opportunity that opened doors, the kind that turned a working model into a name people recognized. The contract was 6 figures, a year-long partnership, international exposure. I signed it in a hotel suite overlooking Biscayne Bay, my hands shaking as I put pen to paper. Troy was there, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Carmen flew in from Austin just to celebrate. We had champagne on the balcony, watched the sun set over the water, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd arrived. Like I'd proven something. Not to Vanessa. Not to my parents. To myself. The campaign shot in Seattle, a city I'd never been to, all rain-soaked streets and evergreen trees and mountains in the distance. The production was massive, a team of 50 people, a budget that felt obscene. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I wore silk and lace, stood under studio lights that made my skin glow, and let the camera catch every curve, every inch of the body I'd been told to hide. When the images went live, they broke the internet. That's not hyperbole. Within 24 hours, the campaign had millions of impressions, thousands of shares, articles written about representation and beauty standards and what it meant to see someone like me in a space that had always excluded us. My follower count exploded. Brands I'd only dreamed of working with started reaching out. I was on magazine covers, interviewed on podcasts, invited to events where I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing. And that's when Vanessa called. Not a text this time. An actual phone call. I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment before I answered. Nat, she said. Her voice was different, smaller. I saw the Lavelle campaign. It's incredible. You're incredible. I didn't say anything. Listen, she continued. I know we haven't been close. I know I wasn't always supportive. But I'm really proud of you. And I was thinking, maybe we could work together. I'd been managing some clients on the side, helping with their social media, bookings, that kind of thing. I could help you. Be your assistant. Keep things organized so you can focus on the creative stuff. I should have said no. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to hang up, to keep the distance I'd built, to protect what I'd worked for. But there was a part of me, a younger part, that still wanted her approval. That still remembered being 12 years old, standing in front of a mirror, wishing my sister would see me as something other than a problem to be hidden. So I said yes. She moved to Miami 2 weeks later. Vanessa arrived on a Thursday afternoon with 2 suitcases and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I picked her up from the airport, watching her walk through the arrivals gate in skinny jeans and a white linen blouse, oversized sunglasses perched on her head. She looked thinner than I remembered, sharper somehow, like all her softness had been filed away. She hugged me briefly, her perfume expensive and unfamiliar, then pulled back to look at me. You look amazing, she said. Really? The camera loves you. Thanks, I said, grabbing one of her suitcases. It was heavier than I expected. She stayed with me for the first week, sleeping on my couch while she looked for her own place. I'd wake up early for shoots and find her already awake, scrolling through her phone with a cup of black coffee, her legs tucked under her. She'd ask about my schedule, take notes in a leather planner she carried everywhere, offer suggestions about which jobs to prioritize. She was good at it, I had to admit. Organized, efficient, the kind of person who remembered details I'd forget. By the end of the month, she'd found a small apartment in Brickell, close enough to my place that she could be there in 15 minutes. She set up a home office, bought a new laptop, started managing my emails and my calendar with the precision of someone who'd been doing it for years. My life got easier. I could focus on the work, on the creative side, while she handled the logistics. Brands started to notice the professionalism, the quick responses, the way everything ran smoothly. Troy loved her. "She's a miracle worker," he said after she'd negotiated a contract that got me an extra $20,000. "You should have brought her on sooner." Carmen was less enthusiastic. When she visited from Austin, she watched Vanessa move through my apartment like she owned it, rearranging my schedule, answering my phone, and afterward, she pulled me aside. "Just be careful," Carmen said. "Family and business don't always mix well." "She's helping," I said. "Really helping." Carmen nodded slowly, but her eyes said something else. "Just keep your eyes open." I didn't listen. I was too busy riding the wave of success, too caught up in the momentum to notice the small things. The way Vanessa would dismiss calls from certain brands, saying they weren't prestigious enough. The way she'd talk me out of collaborations with smaller companies, pushing me toward the big names, the ones that looked good on paper but didn't always align with what I cared about. The way she started speaking for me in meetings, finishing my sentences, making decisions without asking. 6 months in, we landed the Lavelle renewal. Another year, another campaign, double the money. I was in my apartment when Troy called with the news, and I screamed so loud my neighbor knocked on the wall. Vanessa was there, standing in my kitchen, and when I told her, she smiled wide and pulled me into a hug. "We did it," she said. "We're unstoppable." I remember that moment clearly because it was the first time she said we. Not you. We. The celebration was at the Pearl Hotel, a rooftop bar with a view of the entire Miami skyline. Troy had rented out a section, invited people from the industry, models I'd worked with, photographers, brand reps. Vanessa wore a black dress that hugged her frame, her hair styled in waves, her makeup flawless. She worked the room like she'd been born to it, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, introducing herself as my manager. Not my assistant anymore. My manager. I didn't correct her. I was 3 cocktails in, feeling the warmth of success and alcohol, surrounded by people who were congratulating me, telling me I deserved this. Vanessa found me near the railing, handed me another drink, and clinked her glass against mine. "To us," she said. "To proving everyone wrong." We drank. The city lights blurred below us, a sea of gold and white stretching to the horizon. I felt invincible. Untouchable. I didn't see the cracks forming. The problem started small. A missed email here, a scheduling conflict there. Brands would reach out saying they hadn't heard back from my team. I'd check with Vanessa, and she'd say she'd handled it, that they were trying to lowball me, that I was worth more. I trusted her. She was my sister. She was the one person who knew what it was like to grow up in that house, under that pressure, with those expectations. Then money started disappearing. Not all at once. Just small amounts at first. A payment that came in lower than expected. An expense I didn't remember approving. I'd ask Vanessa about it, and she'd pull up spreadsheets, explain the breakdown, point to fees and taxes and costs I didn't fully understand. She was good with numbers, always had been. I wasn't. I'd built my career on intuition and creativity, not spreadsheets and contracts. My accountant, Daniel Foster, was the one who caught it. He was a quiet man in his 40s who wore cardigans and drank herbal tea, the kind of person you'd never notice in a crowd. He'd been doing my taxes since I signed with Azure, and he'd watched my income grow from modest to substantial without ever making a big deal about it. But when he called me one Tuesday morning, his voice was tight. "Natalie, we need to talk. In person." I met him at his office in Coral Gables, a small suite above a bakery. He had papers spread across his desk, highlighter marks covering entire sections. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "There are discrepancies," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "Payments that don't match invoices. Expenses that seem inflated. And several withdrawals from your business account that I can't trace." I stared at the numbers. They swam in front of my eyes, refusing to make sense. "How much?" He adjusted his glasses. "Close to 200,000 over the past 4 months." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of his desk. That's not possible. He showed me the records. Wire transfers. PayPal transactions. Checks written to vendors I'd never heard of. And they all had one thing in common. They'd been authorized by Vanessa. I drove home in silence, my hands numb on the steering wheel. I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof. Something undeniable. So I did what I'd learned to do behind the camera. I watched. I observed. I waited. That night, Vanessa came over with takeout, Thai food from the place we both liked. She spread the containers across my coffee table, talking about an opportunity she'd heard about, a collaboration with a European brand that could be huge. I nodded, picked at my pad thai, and watched her. Really watched her. The way her eyes flickered when she talked about money. The way her hands moved when she lied. After she left, I went through my emails. Not the main account she managed, but an old personal one I still checked occasionally. Buried in the spam folder, I found messages from brands I'd never heard her mention. Opportunities she'd turned down without telling me. Small companies, independent designers, the kind of collaborations that didn't pay as much but meant something. There were dozens of them. All ignored. All deleted from my main account before I could see them. I kept digging. I checked my business account late that night, scrolling through months of transactions. I found payments to a marketing consultant I'd never hired. Charges for advertising campaigns I'd never approved. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. A transfer of $50,000 to an account under the name Brandon Cole. Vanessa's boyfriend. A man I'd met exactly twice, both times briefly, someone she described as working in real estate investment. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with my laptop open, going through every file, every contract, every communication Vanessa had handled. The sun was coming up when I finally found it. An email thread between Vanessa and a woman named Tiffany Wells, someone I recognized from high school, someone who'd been cruel to me back then, someone Vanessa had stayed friends with. The emails were casual, chatty, but buried in the middle of one conversation was a line that made my stomach turn. She has no idea what she's worth. Honestly, it's almost too easy. Another year of this and we'll have enough to start our own agency. Let her be the face while we build the empire. My hands were shaking when I screenshotted everything. Every email. Every transaction. Every deleted message. I uploaded them to a secure cloud folder, then sent the link to Daniel. Then I sent it to Troy. Then I sent it to Carmen. And then I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to figure out how to breathe. Vanessa showed up at my apartment the next morning like nothing was wrong. She had coffee, my usual order, and a folder full of papers she wanted me to sign. New contracts, she said. Better terms. I didn't take the coffee. I didn't look at the papers. I just looked at her. I know what you've been doing, I said. Her face didn't change. Not right away. She set the coffee down slowly, carefully, like she was buying time. I don't know what you mean. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots, and turned the screen toward her. She glanced at it, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt. Panic. Nat, listen. She reached for my hand. I jerked it away. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you've been stealing from me. It looks like you've been sabotaging my career. It looks like you've been planning to use me as a stepping stone for your own business. She exhaled slowly, ran a hand through her hair, and then something in her expression shifted. The panic disappeared, replaced by something colder. You really think you did this alone? She laughed, sharp and bitter. You think anyone would have looked at you twice if I hadn't pushed you? If I hadn't made the connections, negotiated the deals, built your image? I built my image, I said. I did the work. You did the pretty part, she said. Standing there, smiling, letting people take your picture. I did everything else. And you know what? You should be thanking me. Because without me, you'd still be taking headshots in Austin, pretending you mattered. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I'd spent too many years absorbing her cruelty, letting it shape how I saw myself. Not anymore. Get out, I said. She didn't move. You're making a mistake. I said get out. She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up her bag and walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle, looked back at me with something that might have been regret or might have been calculation. You'll regret this, she said. You have no idea what I've been protecting you from. Then she left. I locked the door behind her, leaned against it, and let myself slide to the floor. My phone buzzed. A text from Troy. We need to meet. Now. Troy's office was downtown, tucked into a building that had been renovated from an old warehouse. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, plants hanging from macrame holders. Normally I loved coming here. It felt creative, alive, like a space where good things happened. Today it felt like walking into an interrogation room. He was waiting for me with Carmen and Daniel. They'd all flown in or driven over, dropping everything to be here. That told me how serious this was. Carmen's face was grim, her usual warmth replaced with something harder. Daniel had his laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard like he was ready to show me something I didn't want to see. Troy didn't hug me. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, and I sat down slowly. My legs felt weak, like they might give out if I stood too long. We've been going through everything, Troy said. His voice was controlled, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. Every contract Vanessa touched. Every negotiation. Every payment. And Natalie, it's worse than we thought. Daniel turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a spreadsheet, color-coded, with rows and rows of numbers. He pointed to a column highlighted in red. These are payments that should have come to you but were rerouted, he said. Vanessa set up a secondary account under your business name, but with her as the primary signer. Brands thought they were paying you. They weren't. Not entirely. I felt sick. How much? He scrolled down. The number at the bottom made my vision blur. Just over $400,000. Spread across 8 months. Carmen leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. She was running an entire operation behind your back. The marketing consultant? Fake. A shell company she and Brandon Cole set up. The advertising campaigns? Never happened. She was just funneling money into their accounts, building a fund to launch their own agency. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up, and all I could do was stare at the numbers, trying to process how someone could do this. How my sister could do this. Troy pulled out another folder, this one thicker. But that's not all. She's been blacklisting you. I looked up. What? He slid a stack of printed emails across the desk. These are from brands you never heard about. Mid-tier companies, indie designers, ethical fashion labels. The kind of work you've always said you wanted to do. She turned them all down. Told them you weren't interested, that you were too expensive, that you only worked with luxury brands now. I picked up one of the emails. It was from a sustainable activewear company based in Portland, a brand I'd actually admired for years. They'd reached out 6 months ago, offering a collaboration that included creative input, profit sharing, and a platform to talk about body positivity in athletic spaces. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Vanessa had responded within an hour, declining on my behalf, saying I didn't align with their demographic. Why would she do this? My voice came out small, broken. Carmen's expression softened just slightly. Control. If you only worked with the big brands, the ones that paid through her system, she controlled your income. Your image. Your career. The smaller brands would have paid you directly. She couldn't skim off those. Troy pulled out his phone and set it on the desk. There's one more thing. He tapped the screen, and a voice recording started to play. It was Vanessa. I recognized her voice immediately, that particular cadence she used when she was being charming, persuasive. She was talking to someone, a man whose voice I didn't recognize. "She's not going to last," Vanessa was saying. "The industry chews people up. In another year, maybe two, the novelty wears off. They'll move on to the next phase, the next story. But by then, we'll have enough capital to launch. We'll use her name recognition, her contacts, and build something that actually lasts." The man laughed. "And she has no idea?" "None. She's too focused on being the inspiration, the representation. She doesn't see the business side. Honestly, it's better this way. She gets to feel important, and we get to build something real." The recording ended. Troy's jaw was tight, his fingers drumming against the desk. "That was recorded 3 weeks ago at a restaurant in South Beach." Brandon left his phone on the table when he went to the bathroom. "The waitress overheard the conversation, recognized your name, and recorded it. She reached out to a friend who works in the industry, and it made its way to me." I sat there, frozen. The room felt too small, the air too thin. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, had been slowly dismantled by the one person I'd let in. The one person I'd wanted to trust. "What do I do?" I whispered. Carmen reached over and squeezed my hand. "You fight back. But you do it smart." Over the next 3 days, we built a case. Daniel compiled every financial record, every transaction, every discrepancy. Troy gathered emails, contracts, testimonies from brands who'd been misled. Carmen reached out to a lawyer she knew, a woman named Monica Herrera who specialized in entertainment law and had a reputation for being ruthless when it came to protecting her clients. Monica was in her late 40s, with short silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She sat in Troy's office, reviewing the documents with the focus of a surgeon, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound notebook. When she finished, she looked up at me. "You have a solid case for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty," she said. "We can go after her criminally and civilly. But I need to know what you want out of this. Do you want to see her prosecuted? Do you want your money back? Do you want to make sure she never works in this industry again?" I thought about it. About Vanessa walking into that wedding when we were kids, about the way she'd looked at me in the mirror, about every dismissive comment, every moment she'd made me feel less than. And then I thought about her sitting in my apartment, drinking my coffee, pretending to care while she robbed me blind. "All of it," I said. "I want all of it." Monica smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who loved her job. "Then let's get to work." We moved carefully. Monica advised against confronting Vanessa directly until we had everything in order. We needed bank statements, signed affidavits from witnesses, documentation from every brand she'd misled. We needed to make sure that when we came for her, there was no way out. During those weeks, I kept working. I showed up to shoots, smiled for the camera, posted on social media like everything was fine. Vanessa reached out a few times, texting me apologies that felt rehearsed, asking if we could talk. I didn't respond. Let her think I was just upset, just hurt, just processing. Let her think she still had time. Meanwhile, Troy was working on something else. He'd been in contact with Marcus Wright, a senior executive at Lavelle, the brand that had made me a household name. Marcus had always been supportive, someone who understood what my presence in their campaign meant beyond just selling lingerie. When Troy told him what had happened, Marcus didn't hesitate. "We want to do something," Marcus said during a conference call. "Something public. Not just to support you, but to make a statement about what this industry should be." He proposed a launch event in Seattle, the city where we'd shot the original campaign. A massive production, a celebration of the new collection, but also a platform for me to tell my story. National media coverage, influencers, industry leaders. A moment where I could take control of the narrative before Vanessa had a chance to spin it. I agreed. We set the date for 6 weeks out, enough time to finalize the legal case and prepare for what was coming. Invitations went out. Press releases were written. The event would be held at the Harborview Event Center, a venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, modern and sleek and impossible to ignore. Vanessa saw the announcement on social media. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, she left a message, her voice tight with something that sounded like panic. "Nat, we need to talk. I saw the Seattle thing. That's amazing, really, but we should coordinate. I'm still your manager. Legally, I need to be involved in these decisions. Call me back. Please." I didn't call back. Instead, Monica sent her a letter. A formal, legal document informing her that her services were no longer required, that all access to my accounts had been revoked, and that we were pursuing legal action for financial misconduct. The letter was delivered by courier to her apartment. According to the courier, she'd opened it at the door, read the first page, and gone pale. She tried to fight it. Her lawyer, some guy Brandon probably knew from his real estate circles, sent back a letter claiming that Vanessa had acted in good faith, that any financial discrepancies were misunderstandings, that she'd actually saved me money through her negotiations. Monica responded with a 40-page document outlining every fraudulent transaction, complete with bank records, email evidence, and witness statements. Vanessa's lawyer went quiet after that. 2 weeks before the Seattle event, Monica called me. "We've got her. Everything's documented, everything's airtight. The district attorney is reviewing the case for criminal charges. Civil suit is ready to file. But there's something else you should know." "What?" "She's been trying to sell a story. To tabloids, blogs, anyone who'll listen. She's claiming you've been difficult to work with, that she's sacrificed her own career to help you, that you're turning on her out of jealousy." I closed my eyes. Of course she was. That's what people like Vanessa did when cornered. They flipped the script, played the victim, tried to make you the villain. "Has anyone bought it?" I asked. Monica hesitated. "A few smaller outlets have reached out to her. But nothing major. Most legitimate publications want to hear your side first, and we've made it clear that you'll be making a statement in Seattle. They're willing to wait." The days leading up to the event were a blur. I flew to Seattle with Troy and Carmen, checked into a hotel near the venue, and spent hours rehearsing what I was going to say. Monica had helped me draft a statement, something clear and factual, but I kept tweaking it, trying to find the right balance between honesty and composure. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window of my hotel room, looking out at the dark water of Puget Sound, the lights of the city reflecting off its surface. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. This will destroy both of us. We're family, Nat. Doesn't that mean anything?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked the number. The morning of the event, I woke up early, my stomach churning with nerves. Carmen came to my room, helped me get ready. I wore a custom piece from the new Lavelle collection, deep emerald green, structured but soft, something that made me feel powerful without trying too hard. My hair was pulled back, minimal makeup, simple jewelry. I wanted to look like myself. Not a character. Not a brand. Just me. The venue was already buzzing when we arrived. Camera crews setting up, staff arranging tables, floral displays being positioned near the entrance. Marcus met me in the green room, his usual calm demeanor tinged with excitement. "This is going to be incredible," he said. "You're going to be incredible." I nodded, trying to believe him. Troy squeezed my shoulder. Carmen handed me water. And then it was time. The event started at 7. Guests arrived in waves, hundreds of them, filling the space with chatter and energy. I stayed backstage, watching on a monitor as the room filled. I saw faces I recognized. Models I'd worked with. Photographers. Journalists. Industry executives. And then, near the back, partially hidden by a pillar, I saw her. Vanessa. She hadn't been invited. Security hadn't been told to expect her. But somehow, she'd gotten in, wearing a black dress and a defiant expression, her arms crossed as she watched the stage. My heart started pounding. "She's here," I said to Troy. He looked at the monitor, his jaw tightening. "Do you want her removed?" I thought about it. About having security escort her out, about making a scene before the event even started. But then I realized something. I wanted her to see this. I wanted her to watch as everything she'd tried to take from me became undeniably, permanently mine. "No," I said. "Let her stay." The lights dimmed at exactly 7:30. A hush settled over the crowd as the opening video played on the massive screens flanking the stage. It was a montage of the new Lavelle campaign, images of models of all sizes draped in silk and lace, moving through light and shadow. The soundtrack was something haunting, strings and piano, building slowly. My face appeared on screen, larger than life, and I heard the murmur of recognition ripple through the audience. Marcus took the stage first. He was a natural speaker, confident but not arrogant, the kind of person who could command a room without raising his voice. He talked about Lavelle's mission, about the shift happening in fashion, about why representation wasn't just a buzzword but a fundamental reimagining of who deserved to be seen. Then he paused, smiled, and gestured toward the wings. "And now, I'd like to introduce the woman who embodies everything we stand for. Natalie Rivera." The applause was immediate, thunderous. I stepped out onto the stage, the lights warm on my skin, and for a second I couldn't see anything beyond the first few rows. But I felt them. Hundreds of people, watching, waiting. I reached the microphone, gripped it lightly, and took a breath. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that someone like me could stand in a space like this." More applause. I waited for it to settle, scanning the crowd. I found Vanessa near the back, her face pale under the ambient lighting. Our eyes met. She didn't look away. "I want to tell you a story," I continued. "About what it means to be told you're not enough. That your body is wrong. That you should hide, should shrink, should be grateful for whatever scraps of visibility you're given." The room was silent now, the kind of silence that felt heavy, expectant. I grew up being told I'd never fit into this world. Not by strangers. By family. By people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I was told that my body was an embarrassment. That I should stay behind the camera because that's where I'd be comfortable. Out of sight. I saw a few people nodding. A woman in the third row had tears in her eyes. But I didn't listen. Or maybe I did, for a while, and then I stopped. I became a model not because I wanted to prove them wrong, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I was worth seeing. That my body, exactly as it is, deserved to exist in spaces that had always excluded it. The applause started again, but I raised a hand gently, asking them to wait. "What I didn't expect," I said, "was that the person I trusted most would try to take it all away." The energy in the room shifted. People leaned forward. I saw a few journalists pull out their phones, ready to take notes. For the past year, I've been working with someone I thought had my best interests at heart. My sister. She managed my career, my contracts, my finances. And while I was focused on the work, on being the face of campaigns I believed in, she was building something else. A plan to drain my accounts, sabotage my opportunities, and use my name to launch her own business. Gasps. Whispers. I saw Vanessa stand up, her face flushed. Security moved toward her, but she shook her head, staying where she was, frozen. I found out 3 weeks ago that over $400,000 had been stolen from me. That dozens of opportunities had been turned down without my knowledge. That the person I called family had been systematically dismantling everything I'd built. The room erupted. Not in applause, but in shock, in anger, in disbelief. I saw Marcus off to the side, his arms crossed, his expression hard. Troy was standing near the wings, his jaw clenched. Carmen had her hand over her mouth. I'm sharing this tonight, I said, raising my voice slightly to cut through the noise, because I want you to know that success doesn't protect you from betrayal. That being visible doesn't mean you're safe. And that the people who hurt you most are often the ones you let closest. I paused, looking directly at Vanessa. She was crying now, silently, her mascara starting to run. But I also want you to know that you can survive it. You can fight back. You can reclaim what was stolen, not just the money, but your voice, your agency, your sense of self. And you don't have to do it quietly. The applause that followed was different this time. Louder, more visceral, like the crowd was releasing something they'd been holding in. People stood. The woman in the third row was full-on sobbing. A man near the stage was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. I stepped back from the microphone, letting the moment wash over me. Marcus returned to the stage, shook my hand, and then addressed the crowd. Lavelle stands with Natalie, he said firmly. Not just as a model, but as a person who deserves justice. We're committed to transparency, to accountability, and to making sure that the people we work with are protected, valued, and respected. More applause. He gestured to the screens, which shifted to display legal documents, screenshots of emails, bank records. Everything Monica had compiled, presented in a way that was clear, undeniable. The crowd went silent again, reading, processing. Some pulled out their phones, taking pictures. This would be everywhere by morning. Vanessa moved then. She pushed past a security guard and headed for the exit, her heels clicking frantically on the polished floor. A few photographers followed her, cameras flashing. She didn't stop, didn't look back, just disappeared into the night. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. Not for her. For the version of her I'd once believed in, the sister I'd wanted so desperately to have. After the formal program ended, the event shifted into a reception. People approached me in waves, offering support, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival, thanking me for speaking out. A journalist from a major fashion magazine asked for an exclusive interview. A documentary filmmaker wanted to feature my story. A nonprofit focused on financial literacy for creatives offered to partner with me on workshops. Troy found me near the bar, handed me a glass of champagne, and clinked his glass against mine. You just changed the industry, he said. You know that, right? I smiled, but I was exhausted. All I wanted was to sit down somewhere quiet and breathe. Carmen appeared beside me, looping her arm through mine. Come on. Let's get you out of here for a minute. She led me to a small balcony off the main hall, away from the noise. The cool Seattle air hit my face, sharp and clean. The city stretched out below us, lights twinkling against the dark water. I leaned against the railing, closed my eyes, and just existed for a moment. You did good, Carmen said softly. Really good. It doesn't feel good yet, I admitted. It feels like I ripped something open. She nodded. That's because you did. But it needed to be ripped open. For you. For everyone watching who's been through something similar. We stood there for a while, not talking, just being. Eventually, my phone buzzed. A text from Monica. DA is moving forward with charges. Criminal case filed. Civil suit scheduled for next month. She's done. I read it twice, then showed Carmen. She squeezed my arm. Good. Back inside, the energy had shifted. People were talking, networking, but the intensity had mellowed into something more celebratory. The Lavelle team had set up a photo area where guests could pose with pieces from the new collection. Models were walking around in the lingerie, owning the space, laughing and chatting like it was the most natural thing in the world. I found myself near the back of the room, watching it all unfold, when a woman approached me. She was younger, maybe early 20s, with dark curly hair and nervous energy. She held out her phone, her hand shaking slightly. Can I show you something? She asked. I nodded. She pulled up an Instagram post, a photo of herself in a bikini, standing on a beach, looking confident and radiant. The caption was long, talking about body acceptance, about learning to love herself, about how seeing me in campaigns had changed something for her. "I posted this 6 months ago," she said. And my sister commented that I was promoting an unhealthy lifestyle. That I should lose weight before posting pictures like this. It destroyed me for weeks. I looked at her, saw the pain still there in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." She shook her head. "Tonight, after hearing you, I blocked her. I deleted her comment. And I'm going to keep posting. Because you're right. I don't have to shrink to make other people comfortable." She hugged me then, quick and fierce, and walked away before I could respond. I stood there, holding my champagne, feeling the weight of what I'd started to understand. This wasn't just about me and Vanessa. It was about every person who'd been told they weren't enough. Every person who'd been betrayed by someone they trusted. Every person who needed to see that survival was possible. The next morning, my phone exploded. Articles everywhere. Major publications, fashion blogs, entertainment sites. Headlines ranged from supportive to sensational. Model exposes sister's betrayal in powerful speech. Natalie Rivera takes down family member who stole hundreds of thousands. The fall of a fashion empire built on lies. Some outlets tried to reach Vanessa for comment. She'd gone dark, deleting her social media accounts, ignoring calls. Brandon had done the same. Their lawyer released a brief statement saying they denied all allegations and looked forward to clearing their names in court. It was weak, defensive, exactly what you'd expect from people who knew they were caught. The support was overwhelming. Messages flooded my inbox from people I'd never met, sharing their own stories, thanking me for speaking up. Brands that Vanessa had turned away on my behalf reached out again, wanting to work together. A major streaming service contacted Troy about a potential docuseries. A publishing house offered a book deal. But there was also backlash. Online trolls accused me of airing family business for publicity. Some said I was being vindictive, that I should have handled it privately. A few even defended Vanessa, claiming she'd probably been underpaid for her work and deserved the money she took. Monica advised me to stay offline for a few days, let the dust settle. But I couldn't. I read everything, every comment, every think piece, every hot take. I needed to see it all, to understand how my story was being received, to know what I was up against. Troy scheduled interviews. I sat down with morning shows, podcasts, fashion journalists. I told the story over and over, each time finding new language for the pain, new ways to articulate what betrayal felt like when it came from someone who was supposed to protect you. Some interviewers were empathetic. Others pressed harder, asking if I'd seen warning signs, if I blamed myself, if there was any chance of reconciliation. No, I said to that last question, every single time. Some things can't be fixed. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. 2 weeks after Seattle, the civil suit went to court. It was a closed hearing, not open to the public, but media camped outside the courthouse anyway. Vanessa showed up in a beige suit, her hair pulled back severely, looking smaller than I remembered. She didn't look at me when we passed in the hallway. Her lawyer did most of the talking, arguing that the financial arrangements had been agreed upon verbally, that Vanessa had acted in good faith, that any misunderstandings were due to poor record-keeping, not malice. Monica tore them apart. She presented bank statements, emails with timestamps, testimony from Daniel, from Troy, from brands who confirmed they'd been lied to. She played the recording of Vanessa and Brandon at the restaurant, the one where Vanessa admitted she was using me. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened without expression. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I trusted her because she was my sister. I believed she wanted to help me. Instead, she systematically stole from me while convincing me she was protecting me. I'm here because I want accountability. I want my money back. And I want to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. The judge ruled in my favor. Full restitution, plus damages. Vanessa was ordered to pay back every dollar she'd taken, with interest, and was permanently barred from working as a manager or agent in the entertainment industry. The criminal case was still pending, but Monica was confident. The evidence was too strong. Vanessa would likely face jail time. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I made a brief statement, thanking my legal team, my support system, and everyone who'd stood by me. I didn't mention Vanessa by name. I didn't need to. Everyone knew. That night, I flew back to Miami. Alone. Troy and Carmen had offered to come with me, but I needed space, needed to sit with everything that had happened without having to perform strength or gratitude or anything else. I took a cab from the airport to my apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped into the quiet. It felt different now. Lighter, maybe. Or emptier. I wasn't sure which. I poured myself a glass of wine, stood on my balcony, and looked out at the city. The lights, the traffic, the distant sound of music from somewhere down the street. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. The weeks that followed the court ruling felt like living in the eye of a storm. Everything around me was chaos, media attention, legal proceedings, interview requests, but inside, I was strangely calm. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd done what needed to be done. Now I just had to figure out who I was on the other side of it all. My parents kept trying to reach me. My mother called from different numbers, left voicemails that started apologetic and ended accusatory. My father sent emails with subject lines like "We need to discuss this as a family and you're tearing us apart." I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say to people who'd spent my entire life making me feel invisible, only to suddenly care when my visibility became profitable or, in this case, scandalous. Vanessa disappeared completely. After the ruling, she and Brandon left Miami. Rumor had it they'd moved somewhere out west, maybe Arizona or Nevada, trying to start over where no one knew their names. Her social media stayed deleted. Her phone number was disconnected. It was like she'd been erased from my life as thoroughly as she'd tried to erase me from hers. I should have felt victorious. In a lot of ways, I did. But there was also this strange grief that settled in, not for Vanessa as she was, but for the sister I'd wanted her to be. The one who would have celebrated my success instead of resenting it. The one who would have protected me instead of exploiting me. That person had never existed, and mourning someone who was never real felt absurd, but I did it anyway. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects that actually mattered to me, the kind Vanessa had turned down without asking. I partnered with the sustainable activewear company in Portland, the one that had reached out months ago. We designed a collection together, something practical and beautiful, clothes that moved with bodies instead of against them. I had creative control, profit sharing, and a platform to talk about what I believed in. It felt right in a way the big luxury campaigns never quite had. I also started working with a nonprofit called Bodies Beyond Borders, an organization that provided resources and support for people struggling with body image, eating disorders, and the mental health impacts of living in a world that constantly told them they weren't enough. They asked me to be a spokesperson, and I said yes. Not because it looked good for my brand, but because I remembered being 12 years old, staring at myself in a mirror, wishing I could disappear. Troy and I restructured my team. He brought in a business manager, a woman named Keisha who had 15 years of experience and a reputation for being impossible to fool. She went through every contract with a fine-tooth comb, set up systems to make sure I always knew where my money was going, and taught me how to read financial statements so I'd never be in the dark again. It was empowering in a way I hadn't expected. I'd spent so long thinking the business side wasn't for me, that I should just focus on the creative work and let someone else handle the rest. But understanding my own finances, seeing the numbers, knowing exactly what I was worth, that changed something fundamental. Carmen came to visit 3 months after the trial. She stayed for a week, and we spent most of it just existing together. Cooking in my kitchen, walking along the beach, sitting on my balcony with wine and no agenda. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky had turned that particular shade of orange that only happens in Miami, she asked me the question I'd been avoiding. Do you think you'll ever talk to her again? I watched a pelican dive into the water, emerge with a fish, fly away. Vanessa? Carmen nodded. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to understand why she did it. But I'm not sure any answer would be good enough. Maybe there isn't an answer, Carmen said. Maybe she's just someone who saw an opportunity and took it. Some people are like that. I thought about that. About the idea that maybe there was no deep psychological reason, no childhood wound that explained everything. Maybe Vanessa had just been selfish. Maybe it was that simple. I think I spent so long wanting her approval that I ignored who she actually was, I said. I saw what I wanted to see. Carmen reached over and squeezed my hand. That's not your fault. That's what family does to us. We keep hoping they'll become who we need them to be. We sat there until the sun disappeared completely and the city lights took over. I thought about all the versions of family I'd been taught to believe in. Blood. Obligation. Forgiveness no matter what. And I realized I didn't believe in any of it anymore. Family, real family, was Carmen flying across the country just to sit with me in silence. It was Troy fighting for me when he could have walked away. It was Daniel catching the fraud when he could have just done my taxes and moved on. It was the woman at the Seattle event who'd hugged me and said she was going to keep posting pictures of herself in a bikini. 6 months after everything exploded, I got an unexpected package. No return address, just my name and my apartment number written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it carefully, half expecting something cruel, some last parting shot from Vanessa or her supporters. Instead, inside was a small wooden box and a letter. The letter was from Aunt Diane, my father's older sister. I hadn't seen her in years. She'd moved to Colorado after her husband died, and we'd lost touch. Her handwriting was shaky but legible. Natalie, I've been following what happened. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. Your grandmother, my mother, would have been so proud of you. Before she passed, she gave me this and told me to give it to you when the time was right. I think that time is now. Inside the box was a locket, silver and delicate, with an inscription on the back. To the ones who refused to disappear. I opened it. Inside was a tiny photograph, faded and worn, of a woman I didn't recognize at first. Then I looked closer and saw my eyes, my jawline, my build. It was my grandmother, decades younger, standing in front of what looked like a theater. She was wearing a dress that hugged her curves, her head held high, her expression defiant. I'd never seen this photo. I'd never even known my grandmother had been anything other than the quiet, reserved woman I remembered from my childhood. I called Aunt Diane immediately. She was a performer, Aunt Diane said when she picked up. A singer. She had a beautiful voice, and she wanted to be on stage more than anything. But back then, women who looked like her, like you, weren't given those opportunities. She was told she was too big, too much, that she should just find a nice man and settle down. What happened? I asked. She tried anyway. For years. She auditioned, got rejected, kept trying. Eventually, the rejections wore her down, and she stopped. Met your grandfather, had your father, built a life. But I always wondered what she could have been if the world had been different. I stared at the photograph, at this woman who'd carried her own dreams until they became too heavy. Did she ever talk about it? Once, Aunt Diane said. Right before she died. She told me she was glad the world was starting to change. That maybe someday, someone like her would get the chance she never had. I think she meant you, Natalie. I think she always meant you. I wore the locket to my next shoot, a campaign for a body-positive skincare brand. The photographer noticed it, asked about it, and I told her the story. She asked if she could photograph it, just the locket, close-up, with the inscription visible. The image ended up being used in the campaign, and people started asking about it. I shared my grandmother's story on social media, and the response was overwhelming. Thousands of people commented with their own stories of family members who'd been told they weren't enough, who'd had dreams crushed by a world that couldn't see past their bodies. It became something bigger than I'd intended. A movement, almost. People started using the phrase "refuse to disappear" as a rallying cry. It showed up on protest signs at body positivity marches, in captions on social media, in conversations about representation and visibility. I hadn't meant to start anything. I just wanted to honor my grandmother. But somehow, her story and mine had intertwined into something that meant something to people. A year after the trial, I was invited to speak at a fashion industry summit in New York. It was a big deal, all the major players would be there, designers, executives, editors. The theme was the future of inclusivity in fashion, and they wanted me to give the keynote. I almost said no. Public speaking still terrified me, and the idea of standing in front of an industry that had spent decades excluding people like me felt overwhelming. But Troy convinced me. "You have something to say," he said. "And they need to hear it." I wrote the speech over several weeks, revising it obsessively, trying to find the right balance between honesty and hope. The night before the summit, I barely slept. I kept running through the words in my head, imagining all the ways it could go wrong. But when I stepped onto that stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, some familiar, some not, I felt something shift. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. I started with my grandmother's story. Told them about the locket, about the dreams she'd carried and lost. Then I told them about my own journey. Not just the success, but the pain that came before it. The rejections. The dismissals. The family members who made me feel like I was too much and not enough at the same time. I told them about Vanessa, about the betrayal, about standing in a courtroom and watching someone I'd loved be held accountable for trying to destroy me. And then I told them about what came after. The healing. The rebuilding. The realization that survival wasn't just about enduring, but about refusing to let the world make you smaller. "This industry is changing," I said. "Slowly, imperfectly, but it's changing. And it's changing because people like us refuse to disappear. We showed up. We demanded space. We made them see us, even when they didn't want to." The applause was long and loud. People stood. Some were crying. A designer I'd admired for years caught my eye and mouthed "thank you." Afterward, during the reception, I was approached by so many people I lost count. Models, stylists, photographers, all of them sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them language for their experiences. But the moment that stuck with me was when a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, came up to me near the end of the night. She was nervous, fidgeting with her bracelet, barely making eye contact. "My sister told me I should lose weight before I tried to model," she said quietly. She said I'd embarrass myself. I almost believed her. I felt something crack open in my chest. "What did you do?" She looked up at me, and I saw the determination there, fragile but real. "I signed with an agency last week. I'm doing this anyway." I hugged her, this stranger who was also somehow me, and I told her what I wished someone had told me years ago. "You're enough. Exactly as you are. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. I watched her go, this young woman who was just starting her journey, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The financial restitution from Vanessa came through in installments. It took over a year to get all of it back, and even then, it wasn't quite everything. Some of the money had been spent, dissipated into whatever life she and Brandon had tried to build. But I got most of it. Enough to feel whole again. Enough to invest in the things I cared about. I used some of it to start a fund for emerging models, especially those from marginalized backgrounds who were trying to break into an industry that didn't always want them. It covered things like professional photos, travel to castings, legal fees for contract reviews. The kind of support I wished I'd had when I was starting out. We named it after my grandmother. The Refuse to Disappear Fund. I also bought a small property in Austin, near Carmen's shop. Nothing extravagant, just a little house with a yard and a porch where I could sit and watch the sunrise. I didn't move there full time, but I visited often, whenever I needed to remember who I was before the campaigns and the headlines and the noise. My career continued to grow, but it looked different now. I was more selective about the work I took, more intentional about the brands I partnered with. I turned down offers that didn't align with my values, even when the money was good. I prioritized projects that gave me creative control, that let me tell stories that mattered. And I made sure I understood every contract, every payment, every detail. I would never be in the dark again. There were still hard days. Days when I'd see a family at a restaurant, laughing together, and feel a pang of something that might have been envy or grief. Days when I'd wonder if I'd done the right thing, if I should have handled it differently, if there was some version of events where Vanessa and I could have found our way back to each other. But those days became fewer and farther between. Most days, I felt solid. Grounded. Sure of myself in a way I never had before. 2 years after the trial, I was working on a project in Los Angeles when I got a message on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, just a generic username. The message was short. I'm sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't change anything. But I needed you to know. There was no name, but I knew. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, 1,000 responses forming and dissolving in my mind. Part of me wanted to type something cutting, something that would make her feel even a fraction of what I'd felt. Part of me wanted to ask why, to demand an explanation that might finally make sense of it all. In the end, I did neither. I just closed the app and went back to work. That evening, I met Carmen for dinner at a place overlooking the ocean. We sat outside, the breeze carrying the smell of salt and fried fish, and I told her about the message. How do you feel? She asked. I don't know, I said. I thought I'd feel something. Anger or satisfaction or closure. But I just feel tired. She nodded. Maybe that's all there is. Maybe closure isn't this big dramatic moment. Maybe it's just waking up one day and realizing you're tired of carrying it. I thought about that as we ate, as the sun sank lower and the sky turned pink and gold. Maybe she was right. Maybe healing wasn't about forgiveness or confrontation or even understanding. Maybe it was just about letting go, not because the person deserved it, but because you did. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I opened the locket and looked at my grandmother's face. I thought about all the dreams she'd buried, all the stages she never got to stand on, all the songs she never got to sing for an audience that might have loved her. And I thought about the life I was building, brick by brick, in a world that was slowly, imperfectly learning to make space for people like us. I couldn't give my grandmother the career she deserved. I couldn't undo the years Vanessa had stolen from me. But I could keep going. I could keep showing up, keep refusing to disappear, keep making space not just for myself but for everyone who came after me. I closed the locket, set it on the nightstand, and turned off the light. Outside, the city hummed with life, endless and indifferent. But in that small room, in that quiet moment, I felt something I'd been chasing for years without knowing it. I felt free. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run along the beach. The sand was cool under my feet, the ocean vast and unchanging. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, until the only thing I could hear was my own breathing and the crash of waves. When I finally stopped, hands on my knees, sweat dripping onto the sand, I looked out at the horizon and smiled. I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. And I was still here, still visible, still refusing to let the world tell me I was too much or not enough. That was victory enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.